Hey everybody, Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith here, and you can ask me anything. Due to the fact that we received over 1,000 questions for this episode, we had to break it up into two different segments. So sit back and enjoy as we dive into part two. Our first question comes from Dustin Cox. What is the viewpoint of Indiana leaders about the Epstein files? Do you agree with the amount of action or lack thereof that has been taken so far? What Jeffrey Epstein did and all of those who are associated with him is absolutely evil. It's abhorrent. We should not put up with it or tolerate it anywhere in our culture, society, and frankly in our world. And so I'm glad to see that there's been so much attention given to the Epstein files. I absolutely think they should be released in their fullness. I think people who have been caught doing things, nefarious things, wicked things, should be held accountable, and justice should prevail. But I would also say this too. A lot of people are saying, well, Donald Trump is hiding something. Donald Trump is trying to cover it up because he's in it, or there's something that he's... Listen, do you understand that the last 4 years under the Biden administration, they had access to the Epstein files just like the president now that we have, Donald Trump has access to them? I can't imagine that the Biden administration, if they knew things that were detrimental to President Trump or to his team when they were running for election in 2024 and the Harris campaign was going at Trump hard, I can't imagine they would have just sat on that to be, I don't know, take the higher road or to not sling mud. That to me just doesn't make any sense. If there was something there, it would have come out already. So I actually think the people who are being indicted over the Epstein files now are people like we see happening over in England right now. You have Prince Andrew, who was literally just arrested because of his involvement, and rightfully so. But if you're going to try to use this to weaponize against President Trump, I just don't think there's anything there. So it would have already come out. You can't tell me that President Trump, over the last 10 years, the left has absolutely hated him. They had access to these files. They would have used it if there was something there. I just don't think there is on President Trump, but I do think there is on a lot of other people, and that should come to light as quickly as possible. Our next question comes from Dale Jankovic. Dale writes, how do you feel about U.S. Olympic athletes who don't seem to love their own country? Honestly, that has been incredibly frustrating and disappointing to see U.S. Olympic athletes get up and slam the U.S. on the platform on that world stage. I don't think it's the appropriate place to do that. Listen, I'm all for free speech. I'm all for criticisms and holding your elected officials accountable, absolutely. But when you go and represent the United States as an athlete in the Olympics, you're representing all Americans. I look back at Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was once asked, why doesn't he get more involved in Democrat politics? And he gave a famous rebuttal. He said, because Republicans buy sneakers too. And I think we have to remember that as athletes, you're there to entertain, you're there to actually represent an entire population of people. And really, I don't think that's the platform for people to be using it as a political bludgeoning tool to say, I hate Donald Trump, or I hate America, or I hate this. No, like you have the pleasure and the privilege of representing this great flag that we all are a citizen under. And I think that needs to be the focus, not the squabbles or the drama or the disagreements that we have, but let's unify around the agreements and the things that actually make us a great nation. And I think that's really what Olympic athletes should do. Our next question comes from Jessica Westbury from Lake County. Jessica writes, are you ready for the blue wave? I am. Well, Jessica, thank you for your question. The blue wave, for those of you who don't know, is a big tsunami of Democratic election wins in the upcoming midterms. Now, that's a big topic of discussion. I think it comes down to messaging, though. You know, myself, President Trump, Vice President Vance, Governor Braun, we often answer questions. We're open. We talk to the press. We take questions from anyone like you, and we respond on our messages. We know what we believe, and we know why we believe it. I think the Democrats, outside of hating Donald Trump, they don't have a message. They don't know the policy issues. They don't know what they believe or why they believe it. They just know that orange man bad. But don't take my word for it. Let's hear from the leader of the Democrat Party.
Would and should the U.S. actually commit U.S. troops to defend Taiwan if China were to move?
You know, I think that this is such a, I think that this is of course a very long-standing policy of the United States.
Good luck with that. Our next question comes from Sarah Melissa from Indianapolis. Sarah asks, have you ever met or actually spoken to a trans youth? Well, Sarah, great question. And the answer is yes. I've been a youth pastor for about 15 years in my ministry career. And oftentimes we would meet with or have students that were struggling with their identity. And it was oftentimes in the transgender area. And first thing I want to tell everyone, that you are fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God, no matter who you are, no matter what you believe, no matter what you're struggling with. And I love people enough to tell them that first and foremost. You are an image bearer of the Creator. That's what the Latin term imago Dei means. You are an image bearer of God. And so I always start from that perspective, that trans youth, they are beautifully, fearfully, and wonderfully made. However, they are struggling with a mental illness. They are struggling with something that oftentimes leads down to a very destructive path in their life. And as someone who loves them, I tell them the truth. I say, hey, God's got something better for you. And in the scientific community, in the healthcare community, we refer to transgenderism as gender dysphoria. This is actually termed that way to indicate that it is a mental illness and it is prescribed as such. And so we need to not affirm somebody in their illness. We need to say, hey, you're ill. That's okay. We still love you, but we're going to help you become well. And that's how I always address any time I meet a transgender youth. I always start there. I say, you're loved. I love you, but I want to help you get whole. I want to help you find healing. I want to restore you to God's best in your life. And sometimes they receive that. Sometimes they don't. But take the issue of anorexia. That's it. That's a mental illness. Somebody who thinks that they're overweight, and so they begin to starve themselves. And we don't affirm them in that starvation. We say, hey, you've got a mental illness here. You're thinking wrong. You're not overweight. We love you enough to tell you so. And we don't give students who struggle with anorexia weight loss drugs. That would be incredibly insane. But for some reason, we do that when it comes to the transgender issue. To me, it's all the same. It's a wrong thinking. It's a mental disorder. And people who love should love enough to speak truth into somebody's life. Because I believe when people know the truth will actually give them true and authentic healing that they desperately are crying out for. Our next question comes from Jason Evans. Jason writes, what is the benefit of Indiana being one of 2 states housing war drones? So hypothetically, if World War III breaks out, wouldn't that make us a target? Well, Jason, I think the question is legit. I think that's a serious concern. Obviously, we have really bad actors around the world that we have to be ready for war. I believe in peace through strength. The best offense is a good defense. Having good deterrence oftentimes brings great peace. And so I think it's important for Indiana to take a lead in upping our military ability. I'm happy that we are housing military war drone technology in Indiana, and we are moving under Governor Braun's leadership. We're moving in that direction. I think that's going to be very healthy for the nation as a whole. I think ultimately, if we become a target, well, there's other things in Indiana that make us a target anyway. I mean, we've got one of the largest naval bases in the country in Indiana. I mean, that right there, Crane Naval Base, is going to make Indiana a target. We have other industries such as Raytheon and that make military technology. So ultimately, I think looking at us as not being a target, if it weren't for the war drones, I think we already are. And we just need to recognize that, prepare for that, and be ready to say, hey, if you do something, enemies of the world, to the United States, or specifically Indiana, we will respond, and we will respond with so much force that you will be very sorry that you took those steps. So peace through strength, I think this would be one more step in making sure America is a strong, secure nation, and I'm glad Indiana gets to play a role. Our next question comes from Janet Kaiser. Janet writes, I've noticed that the same 50 angry liberals seem to always leave hateful messages on your social media posts. How are you able to tune out all that negativity? Well, Janet, I'm glad you noticed that, because that really is what's going on. It's not a majority of the people. I get messages, private DMs, texts, phone calls, emails from people far more than the negative, and they're always the positive. They're saying, hey, thanks for what you're doing. Keep it up. We're so happy you're in there. You keep fighting for truth. We're 100% behind you. That's actually what keeps me going. It's easy to tune out the negativity when you recognize all the positive things that are coming your way. And I do want people to recognize, as you look at social media, remember, social media is not real. A lot of this is hyped up outrage. It's faux outrage. Some of these accounts are even bots, we found. And so this isn't really a real indication of what the greater public, the general majority of the people are thinking or feeling. And so I want, just keep that in mind when you're reading through comments. But I will tell you this, and please don't let the haters know this, but every time they comment or every time they have a reaction, what that does is it bumps up the algorithm of my posts, so it goes further and travels farther than any of the other posts that would not have those comments on there. And we want that. We want the message to go as far and wide as possible. And so really, I'm actually kind of grateful for the haters because they help me get the message out on what's really happening in Indiana and across our nation. Our next question comes from Tony Bolin. Tony writes, what makes you think that my 17-year-old son doesn't have First Amendment rights, but you can put a chapter of TPUSA in his school without needing approval from the parents? Tony, this has been a hot topic recently. We have a lot of clubs. We have a lot of things happening in our public schools. And there's this idea of equal access, right? If there's one club that has a activism or political bias that's at the school, then other clubs should be allowed to do that. And that's what I'm fighting for. I'm not fighting for TPUSA only. I'm fighting for TPUSA as well. It's not to say that TPUSA, should be the only club in these schools. I want there to be a wide swath of ideas. I want there to be a wide swath of conversations happening. But if you're going to try to silence things like Club America or TPUSA chapters, which is happening all over our state. It just happened at Valpo University. They have a Muslim Islamic chapter. They have an LGBTQ activism chapter. But when TPUSA said we want to have a patriotic chapter of TPUSA Club, Valpo said no. Now, granted, Valpo is a private institution, so fine. They can do what they want. But I do want to highlight that in the public school setting, it's not private. And public schools have the duty to honor all voices and to listen to everybody and make equal access an actual option. So if you're gonna have one club, you gotta open up to all the other clubs. And when it comes to your son's First Amendment rights, your son has First Amendment rights, but they're being stewarded by you because he's not 18 yet. So those rights aren't fully his yet. In the same way, he has Second Amendment rights, but he's not allowed to use them yet fully as a 17-year-old. Next year when he turns 18, he'll be able to. But you can't give him Second Amendment rights totally on his own as a 17-year-old, can you? Well, if that's the case for the Second Amendment, then the First Amendment also applies. Next question comes from David Perry from Paoli, Indiana. David writes, what are you doing to protect Hoosiers from being shot by ICE when walking out our doors or taking our kids to school? Dun, dun, dun. Well, David, I hate to break it to you, but that's not actually what's happening. ICE is not just going out and shooting Hoosiers as they walk to school. And I think the premise of your question is actually a faulty premise. I think what you're doing is you're trying to fearmonger. I think you're trying to create a narrative that isn't there, but you really want it to be there. You want it to be so, but unfortunately it ain't so. And I believe that what ICE is doing is absolutely just and right. While we look at the two incidences that happened in Minnesota, while tragic, let's remember that one was driving her car into ICE agents, and the other one was being hostile and attacking ICE agents while armed. This was not some just random person walking down the street. These were hostile, aggressive actions taken against law enforcement, and law enforcement had to respond. They shouldn't have been there in the first place. They should have been letting ICE do their job. They have to be able to round up people who should not be here, that should not be here. They're here illegally. And so if ICE is not given that proper authority and that ability to do that in our communities, what's going to happen? You're going to see a state of lawlessness continue to fester and grow. And you're going to see people like Lake and Riley, stories like that all over this nation that have been heartbreaking to watch. Lake and Riley is one of many that should still be alive today had it not been for an illegal immigrant who was here doing really bad things. I want ICE to come into Indiana, and I want ICE to do their job well in the Hoosier state, because I believe when they do that, it will protect Hoosiers. It will protect us, it will protect our family, and the kids that you are concerned about walking to school, they will be more protected if ICE is allowed to do their job. So local law enforcement, state law enforcement should all help ICE in doing their job. And I know under Governor Braun's leadership that the state police and state agencies are being told they have to help ICE. And we want all county officials, sheriffs, and local police forces in Indiana to do the same. That would be the responsible, law-abiding thing to do. So thank you to everyone on the ICE team that's doing the tough job of going after these criminals that should not be here and sending them home, making people come through the front door of our nation's immigration system the right way. Kevin Trobaugh asks, do you choose which questions you will ignore from the list, or do you blame not answering questions on a non-identified staffer? What do you think about this question, Stefan?
No good, boss. Let's move along.
Nancy Ann Davidson from Noble County writes, how do you see yourself, pro-life or pro-birth? Well, Nancy, I get this a lot when I put something out about being pro-life or being Indiana should be a pro-life state or this generation is a pro-life generation. People will oftentimes will say, you're not really pro-life, you're just pro-birth. Well, listen, I am pro-birth. I don't think we should be murdering children in the wombs of their mothers. And so I'm going to absolutely fight against that till the day I die. I will be a pro-birth person. And then when somebody is born, we should help them where they need help. I love the Indiana Right to Life slogan, loving them both, the mother and the child. And that's what it means to be pro-life. That's what I'm about. And so I think I'm both. I'm very pro-birth and I'm very pro-life. And you know what? God is the God of life. He's not the God of death. And we serve the God of life. And so for the left, the extremists on the left that want to push murder of children, I'm against that. I think that's egregious. I think that's horrific. When you see what happens in the womb when a child is ripped apart limb by limb, the child is feeling pain, the child is being destroyed in one of the most cruel forms of fashions that we've ever seen in the earth, like anywhere. And yet here in America, we say, well, that's just a woman's right to choose. No, that's murder. And we should not be okay with that. Next question comes from Troy Chester. Troy writes, why don't homeschool children receive the same tax funding as public school children? It's unfair that my children do not benefit from the property taxes that I pay. Troy, great point. I actually agree with you. I think your tax dollars should follow your students wherever you choose as a parent to educate your children. We have a great voucher program here in Indiana. It's a universal voucher program that actually allows most of your tax dollars to go with you to the school of your choice when you choose the school you want your children to go to. Now in Indiana, we also have a really healthy homeschool environment. The Indiana Homeschool Association, great people. I know many of the people at the Homeschool Association there. They actually don't want the vouchers. We've asked them, I've approached them and said, can we get vouchers to the homeschool families in Indiana? And oftentimes they say, and it's fair, that with the government shekels come the government shackles. They're very, very concerned that if they start receiving government money a few years down the road, government will start to tell them what they can and cannot teach their children. So they just really want to say, we want the government out. We don't want the money. We're not asking for the tax dollars. We literally just want you to leave us alone. And that is a fair argument. I get that. My response, though, to the homeschool communities is saying, hey, Indiana is not telling you what to do, at least right now. Now, will there come a day that Indiana probably goes the way of Illinois, where Illinois is really coming down hard on parents who homeschool and say you have to teach things like evolution or things like the LGBTQ identity agenda. Yes, Indiana probably will go that way someday, unfortunately. That's just the tide of evil taking and sweeping over the world. But we're holding the line right now in Indiana, and I would say use that voucher money. If you're a private school, a Christian school, a charter school, or a homeschool, there are no strings attached with that money. You can still teach what you believe is right for the children that you educate. So use it while you got it. The day that Indiana, hopefully, God forbid, ever goes down that path and says, now you have to teach something that we know is not true, well, then stop taking the money and tell the government to go pound sand. Next question comes from Jordan Esparza. Jordan writes, what's your favorite Bible verse? Well, Jordan, I think it goes in seasons. And I think this season for me, the Bible verse that keeps coming back to mind is John 8:32. It says, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. I look across Indiana, our nation and our world, and I see people struggling with bondage and oppression, whether that's fear, anxiety, suicide, financial oppression, whether they're addicted to drugs, alcohol, gambling, all kinds of things that just make them say, I don't know if I can go on tomorrow. Well, I want you to know God is the God of freedom. God doesn't want you to be in any type of oppression, whether it's spiritual or physical oppression. And I want people to be free. And this nation was founded on the truth of freedom for all. Galatians 5:1 says, for it is for freedom's sake that Christ has set us free. Well, how do people get free? That's where John 8:32 comes in. Know the truth. If you know the truth, then freedom will come. But if people don't know the truth, they're always going to be in bondage. And so we need people who know the truth, and we need people to speak the truth. So Jordan, I would encourage you to study God's word. What does our Creator say about things? Know it, and then speak it out. And you're going to see freedom flourish all around you, all around yourself, all around your family, your community, your state, and your nation. So that's probably the verse that right now, more than any other verse, is standing out to me in this season. Our next question comes from Lavender Falls. Lavender writes, can you please do something to lower our utility bills, property taxes, and income taxes? Regular Indiana people need the help. Lavender, I'm so glad you said that. That is absolutely the thing I hear more than anything else is Hoosiers are struggling financially. We have high taxes. Property taxes are killing homeowners. Utility tax are killing the average Hoosier. They've seen their utility prices double since last year. And I want you to know that I am in the State House every day talking to legislators. So we've got to relieve the pressure. We've got to open up the pressure valve. Things like getting rid of sales tax on utility bills. Getting rid of sales tax on utility bills would be a little bit of a relief. And yet some of our legislators don't seem to want to do that. And I think it's a matter of us just staying consistent, staying persistent, and saying, listen, we're not going away. You got to do some of these basic things that could relieve the pressure. When it comes to property taxes, I believe property taxes are immoral. I've said that for many, many years. I think we got to get rid of property taxes, and that is the vision and the end goal. But it is such a convoluted, complex system right now that so many layers of government depend on property taxes to function even at the slightest level. We can't just pull the rug out from underneath local communities by ending property taxes tomorrow. There has to be a winding down of property taxes and then a replacement mechanism of some form to get funding stable for these local communities. I believe J.D. Prescott's bill would do that. That's a bill I've been very supportive of the last couple of years, and that's a bill that would repeal property taxes over 7 years and replace it with a sales tax on services. And finally, I'll say this, Lavender, income taxes. The 16th Amendment that was in the early 1900s that was passed by Congress and amended the Constitution and allowed for income tax to happen, that is by far the worst amendment that we've ever seen in our constitutional history. And I would absolutely love for Indiana to have a resolution that calls for the repeal of the 16th Amendment. And I think Indiana should lead the charge. Our voice should go loud and clear to Washington, repeal the 16th Amendment, repeal the 16th Amendment, and we say it until Washington actually does it someday. And finally, Autumn Edwards writes, why are you still trying, ? Well, Autumn, it's because of people like Lavender Falls in our last question. Hoosiers who need real help. I didn't get into politics to be a career politician. I actually would have never in a million years wanted to be a politician, but I started seeing people who were crying desperately for help, whether that was during the COVID shutdowns and people were being forced to take an experimental drug or else be fired from their jobs, whether that's the high prices of property taxes or income taxes or things like utility costs, people who are desperately saying, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it to tomorrow. I got so frustrated and so mad because the things I saw government doing were the opposite of helping everyday Hoosiers. And so I said, fine, if no one else is going to do it, here I am, Lord, send me. And I think he did. And so I'm in this fight until God says I'm done. And I will continue to fight. I really don't care about re-election. I don't care about my political career. I care about doing the right thing, saying it as loudly and as boldly as I possibly can because of people like Lavender Falls who desperately need help. So that's why I'm still trying. So thanks for your question, Autumn. A big thanks to everyone who sent in their questions and comments. This is my favorite part of the job. I love hearing what you have to say, and I love answering you honestly where I stand, why I believe what I believe. So until next time on Ask Micah Anything, we'll catch you later.